Well, good evening, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Hockey Writers Live. I'm Mark Scheig, your host. I know we took last week off, kind of an important time in America. We just felt it was appropriate, but we're just one night away from hockey, and it feels so good. And to celebrate that, we're going to have a full hour-long season preview with somebody that I admired growing up. I just found out that he has a son who's in Indiana, Pennsylvania, that place that I'm familiar with. So it's really good to have the great John Buccigross join us tonight. Bucci, how's it going?
Good. Great to see you, boys. Great to be here. Always love talking hockey.
Always love talking hockey. Absolutely. Just first and foremost, how are you doing with everything? Are you healthy? Just how's it going?
Yeah, it's been everything's been fine. Luckily, with at ESPN, haven't really missed a beat in terms of work, so I feel blessed certainly to be able to do that, and family all healthy, and it's been okay for the most part. You know, to be able to go to work, being able to get outside and play golf this past summer, like many Americans did. The golf industry had a very good year. To be outside, which was great. So to be able to do that, and it's overall not terrible, but certainly hopeful that things can get back to normal. I'm kind of May is my over/under. I'm thinking maybe by June 1 we'll be back. So I'm trying to think 6 months out. And if it's before, great. Yep. I'm kind of mentally prepared June 1.
I agree with you. And I think we're going to get there. And starting tomorrow, I think we're starting to get a little bit of normalcy. A 56-game season is going to get underway. It's coming at the right time, I think, for a lot of us, John.
Yeah, I think it's it's nice. It's still weird, no fans. It's that it won't be back until fans are back. The fans make everything. They make it all. They give it the heart and the soul and the pulse. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's kind of my hope too. Is maybe by when I mentioned June 1st, part of it was maybe the Stanley Cup Finals and NBA Finals, baseball, that we'll see full rinks, and so to really get that ambience back.
So what do you think, just before we get into rapid fire, just kind of an overall, the NHL announced tonight that there were 27 positive tests, 17 on the Dallas Stars. I feel like that this is going to be normal throughout the course of the year. Is that kind of what you're expecting as well?
Yeah, it's hard to figure out what to expect. How many people have, been infected and didn't know it over the summer even. And most of these young people are asymptomatic. Looks like all the Dallas Stars are, from what the NHL release said. So and that was kind of my philosophy from the beginning is try to get through this as smart and safely as possible. It looks like young people are not in danger for the most part. The MMA and Dana White really took that first step in trying to make it as safe as possible, figure it out and move forward. Again, that was, for some people, was too aggressive perhaps. And other people, or maybe are too aggressive. And then I feel like I think there is a way out of this if we look at the information we have and the data, and to try to keep, and my point was not so I could watch sports, and it's so people could have their jobs. Because as we know, people look at sports like it's not a big deal. Sports is a huge deal. It gives people livelihoods. It gives people, it pays their mortgage. It educates their children. It gives them dignity of a job. Sports is massively important. And that's why I wanted sports and wanted sports leagues to figure it out, give it a shot, try to play. If it's, if we see young people getting very sick or even dangerously sick, then obviously that would have been a game changer. But, college football made it through. We're trying to do the best we can. And hopefully that's what will happen here.
Yeah, and the NFL's done a good job for the most part of getting their season going. And the NHL is going to certainly try their best. I was actually a little bit encouraged to see the early numbers. I mean, given that there were a lot of tests given, to have just 27 seems encouraging. So hopefully they continue down that track.
It does. You're right. You're not a bad person if you get infected. You can do everything and get infected. That's this thing is branded some people as I think as bad people because they get it, or they in some way they get judged in a certain way. So that's, to me, that's a bad part of it. But yeah, let's play hockey. Let's drop the puck tomorrow. There'll be some canceled games. We know that, but hopefully we can get through it.
Absolutely. Let's just jump into this. So fans, we're going to go rapid fire for the whole hour. One question per team, around a minute or 2 minutes of his thoughts on the particular team. We're going to go by division. We're going to start in Canada. And I got the Calgary Flames first here. And I feel like they're being undervalued a little bit. They got their franchise goaltender. I don't think they've had anybody since Markstrom since the days of Mika Kiprusoff. Are we undervaluing the Calgary Flames, John?
Maybe some people might, but I agree that's a team that they could win that division. Obviously, Toronto's the overwhelming favorite, but Calgary has been built very well. Like you said, they're one of those teams that just lack the goaltender. I kept thinking every year at the deadline they'd be aggressive and try to get one of these guys who was available, but it didn't happen. But no, they're a pretty well-rounded team with some high-end talent, and it's a lot of pressure. Markstrom certainly isn't a given. He's not a Vasilevsky given between the pipes, but he had a pretty good run in Vancouver. This is a better team that he's going to. And if he can handle it, because obviously he won't have fan pressure early, so that should help him a lot too, if he would even feel it. But I like that team to certainly. I would not be surprised if they finished first or finished fourth.
Exactly. I think that's going to be true of most teams in the Canadian division too as we go. Edmonton's got the Draisaitl, McDavid, the obvious. But the questions around defense and goaltending, is there a case to be had that they could be the best team in the Canadian division?
I don't think so. I don't think quite yet. Everything would have to go perfectly for them. Kenny Holland is trying to build some depth in an organization. They don't have a lot of depth. So if there's COVID cases individually, if there's injuries, that team could be in for a bit of a struggle. So there's a fine line with them. So they're trying to add talent. They have added a little bit of depth on that team, good additions, but it does center around McDavid and Draisaitl staying healthy and being highly productive. And then again, will they get the play in net? So overall, it's definitely an organization on the way up. We need McDavid in the playoffs, like baseball needs Mike Trout in the playoffs. We need Connor McDavid in the postseason to explode. And so, I root for them because it's good for hockey to get him postseason. So it's going to be tough. They're a bubble team probably in that division from that third to sixth slot in all likelihood. But they should be a little better than they were last year.
And I wonder if it may be a commitment to defense by the two-headed monster of Draisaitl and McDavid will maybe have a little bit of effect on the team as well, if they could really take the next step in that front.
McDavid has to make that next step because he hasn't. He's not good in his own end, and he needs to make that big time commitment. I know he probably feels pressure to score. He loves to score. He's young. He gets paid a lot of money, so he wants to make sure he's first or second in the league in scoring. But they have to, and I'm sure they have talked to him that, hey, the fans know the game. They know what a 200-foot player is. We've seen it throughout history. Steve Yzerman made that famous pivot when he approached 30 under Scotty Bowman and went on to win 3 cups. So he's going to have to make that commitment, figure it out, whether it's through coaching or whether it's through effort or concentration to be better at his own end.
Absolutely. Montreal next, and they have a couple very interesting dynamic, couple of young pieces. They got Josh Anderson now, Alexander Romanov on that blue line. They still have Carey Price in net. Where do you make of them, given that they got young center depth down the middle as well? And maybe they can take the next step after they beat Pittsburgh in the play-in round last year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be really good. I know they're kind of a chic pick on people who think they could make a big jump, but and we'll probably talk about this a couple of times, but for teams who haven't played hockey for a long time, because how the season went last year, you're going to see young players take a big jump. I mean, some of these guys have had 9-10 months to work out and skate and get stronger and get in the gym. And I really think you're going to see some young guys, whether it's Montreal, really take a big jump. And then, like you mentioned, Anderson's a great fit to go along with Gallagher. They got a lot of sandpaper. They got a lot of grit. This is a team that, I think they got a little bit of a pulse to them and an upward trend to have the goalie in net. And I would watch out for Montreal. I think they're going to be a tough opponent every night.
And Ottawa is a team, John, that I'm very interested in, not necessarily that they're going to be in the playoff race, but Tim Stützle's there. They have a lot of different pieces now. They made that trade with Tampa Bay as well. Matt Murray's in goal. What will define a successful season in your mind there?
Yeah, probably just, no long losing streaks and just playing well and giving a good effort every night, obviously. But yeah, they're coming. They're starting to add those pieces. in some ways in the short season, they'll probably be in a good position, get another top 5 pick, which probably be good for them. Reset for the start at long last, hopefully of a normal regular season in 21-22, and put themselves in position for that. Make sure the cap's in a good shape. There's always a player out there who you can overpay a little bit, who will, and they see if they're a good team, who could come join you. So yeah, it's just developing those young players and just kind of setting themselves up salary cap wise for next year.
Mm. And Toronto, we know, what does this have to do with the Leafs? Well, they seem like that they're the overwhelming favorite. But my question for you is, do you feel like that they did enough to take the next step to be looked at as a serious cup contender?
I think just because their young players are going to continually improve. If they do nothing, they'll be better. Just because Matthews and Marner, I kind of like I know they didn't do well in their playoff series in the bubble, but I did like their effort. I think they're gamers. I think Marner's a gamer. I think he's a guy who will figure it out in the playoffs and likes the battle. And Matthews is just going to keep getting better and better. And people can't forget about him in that McKinnon, McDavid, young player Mount Rushmore list. I mean, he's right there. No one has the arsenal of shots that he has at every distance, at every angle, wrist shot, slap shot, breakaway. So I still really big believer in Marner and Matthews. But you're right. Is there enough on the blue line? They try to plug these pieces here and there. Is the goalie really long-term good enough? Is he a 4-series goalie? You need 4-series goalies who can last mentally and physically through 4 grinding playoff series. And you never know for sure. So Still some question marks for sure. They're certainly the big favorite in the division to win. And if they can, get through the playoffs, they're just about a guaranteed Final Four now. So get through that division. But a Toronto-Calgary playoff series would be pretty cool.
That'll be fun. Now, could this be the last of the big 4 if they get another early exit?
Well, they're going to have to. I can't see how they won't trade Nylander. I mean, or Tavares. So Tavares signing really handcuffed them. It was probably a sign they shouldn't have made. It really handcuffed them for a couple of years. So unless they find someone to take him, which they probably could always find someone, especially that's what these expansion teams have a lot of power now. When they enter the league, they can take contracts, get good players, and get draft picks. It's really a home run. We saw Vegas do it, and they're now set up for long-term success for the next decade. And I'm sure Seattle will try to do the same thing. Use their leverage to give teams salary cap relief, get a good player, get to the floor, and get draft picks, and be pretty good right away. So it's a tough act to follow. Seattle has with Vegas, but the blueprint is there to poach, and Toronto is one of those teams who certainly will look to Seattle to get rid of one of those contracts if after this year they're kind of like you said, the same as they ever were.
Absolutely. And Vancouver, can they repeat last year? I mean, different goaltender, Braden Holtby, and now who's won a cup, made a nice run last year. Can they repeat that performance in your mind?
Yeah, sometimes there's a bit of a drop back, but again, these young players should get better. Quinn Hughes is just an unbelievable, one of the most watchable players for me. I love watching these defensemen come out of their own end. Whenever I call the college hockey game, I really like to, when a defenseman makes that amazing move or amazing first pass, sometimes you watch a hockey game and the analysts are talking about something else or just kind of play it off as no big deal. But to me, it's like because we don't have a lot of goals in hockey, I really feel like we need to describe these great physical moves that a defenseman makes out of his own end, an unbelievable move and quick 6-foot pass for a breakout. These are important parts of hockey. I think during a broadcast, it's not, I like to highlight those. And Quinn Hughes is one of those guys. When I did his game at Michigan, did his college games at Michigan, I always tried to point out what an amazing skater he is and a player he is. So Pettersson and himself and Besser, there's a lot there. But sometimes what we talk about with Montreal, I sense maybe there's some mojo and some rhythm, especially if they get off to a good start, which everyone has to get off to a good start with 56 games. You can't go, 1-6-1 after your first 7 or something like that, 2-5-2 even, because man, the season's 10%, more than 10% over, and you're in a hole. So they're a team you got to watch out early to see if they can to carry that over, because a lot of times some of these teams, hockey's a it's a blood sport. You can run on momentum,
Mhm.
and it's hard to generate momentum. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere when you're a young team and then you ride it. Now, when you start from scratch, can you generate it and do it again? And like you said, that's the question mark with them.
And now Winnipeg, speaking of trying to get some kind of momentum going, there's been drama. Patrick Laine, Jack Roslovic, don't know what's going to happen with them, but they're going to start the season seemingly with Laine playing, Roslovic not. Is there a path to the playoffs for this team, and what do they have to do to kind of put the drama on the back burner?
Yeah, I think there is. They have a good goalie. They have a lot of talent. You know, Laine could easily come out and lead the league in goals this year. He's got that kind of talent. If his attitude is there and he gets off to a good start and suddenly he feels good, he certainly could go out and lead the league in goals. He's a massive talent. I don't understand his up and downs and the situation. He is kind of, you know, he is a bit of a free spirit, an interesting personality. He's not a fall in line hockey guy that we're kind of used to. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. It seems to be a bad thing right now for him and the team. But man, can he shoot it? And from anywhere, any angle, he's Ovechkin-like. I still think he's got 600 goal potential in his career because he started so young. But maybe he doesn't have the mental consistency to do it throughout a long career. Maybe there'll be ups and downs. But they certainly have enough talent. They draft well. They have good depth if they run into those issues. So again, if they could get momentum and rhythm, they're definitely they're a good, solid, playoff bubble team on the plus side. And overall, I think they'll be fine.
Okay. If you're just joining us, a little bit quarter after 8 here, Hockey Writers Live, our season preview. We've got John Buccigross. We're going division by division, rapid fire style. We just did the Canadian division. We're going to jump over to the East now. And taking a look at the Boston Bruins, John, I can't imagine a team without Zdeno Chara. That's weird to see, but they're now in a much harder division, so we know what they can bring. They still got plenty of talent there, but going into a tougher division, how do they stack up?
Yeah, they've had a bit of a break these last few years as Montreal has sagged, and they've almost been a playoff lock in that division with Tampa Bay. But it'll be tougher this year. I thought Chara looked a bit washed last year. I was one of those that I don't think he has a lot left or can really give a lot. I really think Charlie McAvoy is one of the best defensemen in hockey. He covered for Chara a lot, I think, when he played with him. If he has a younger, stronger pair this year, whether it's Grzelcyk or whomever they decide to go with, McAvoy's really an amazing player. Obviously needs to figure out his shot, whether it's shooting more, a bit more accurately. It'd be nice if he could get to double-digit goals, at 10 area, especially on the power play. But, Pastrnak is in his prime. He's one of the best players in hockey when he's healthy. How much does Bergeron and Marchand have left? They're 30 years old now. Is DeBrusk going to able to return? I'm not sure if DeBrusk overall is going to be that consistent 25 goal scorer. He's a great skater. He's a great kid. But does he have this, the hockey sense to be that guy who knows where to go at all times, understand angles to give himself the best chance to score, to get in high traffic areas? So there are some question marks with the Bruins if their bottom six will produce. If Bergeron at times, he's been battling some injuries the last couple of years while still playing. The age is creeping up. At times he can look very slow. And again, in a year that you have to get off to a good start, it'll be interesting to watch. But Marchand and Bergeron they're usually in great shape. They're committed to hockey.
Yep.
You mentioned Pastrnak is an elite player. Will they split that line up to try to get more depth? That's another thing. Krejci's kind of playing for a contract, so he's a bit inspired. Still a lot here. I still think they're a playoff team.
Buffalo Sabres, a lot of new faces. Really excited to see how a power play looks with Taylor Hall and Jack Eichel and Victor Olofsson on it. But boy, still a lot of questions. Rasmus Dahlin's looking to take the next step. Goaltending with Hutton and Allmark back there. Boy, but again, a tough division. Just, do they have any shot in your mind to at least compete for a playoff spot?
Yeah, man, you hope so, because, just like we see the Buffalo Bills, what they do for the NFL and do for the league. It's such a great sports city. And the Sabres they're that, they're that David city of David and Goliath. It's underdog city. If they had a franchise draft in all four sports, and cities, and you go to a city, they probably wouldn't get a team in this era, but they have they have a football team, they have a hockey team, and Eichel's a great centerpiece, and they have a lot of good stuff, as you mentioned up front, but do they have the goaltending? And that's going to be the big question. That's what it comes down to. You can't win without really, really, really good goaltending, and you can't win the playoffs without great goaltending. So
Yep.
I think they have enough up front. I think these young guys will get better. Darlene needs to break out. Again, it's been a long time since he played. So my guess, he's going to look older and stronger and better. So again, they get off to a good start. They're 5-1, 6-1. And they get that Vancouver Canuck momentum. They got some young number 1 draft picks playing this year. It's coming. I know, Botterill's gone to Seattle, Jason Botterill, but he came from Pittsburgh, where he understood college signings and drafting, and they put people in Buffalo, they put people in Rochester to develop them. And you never know when a young guy is going to take a step up. That's the great mystery of sports and hockey, because it's a young man's sport.
Yep.
You never know when someone's going to take a big jump up and is a whole new player and gives a team a whole new look. So that's the hope. And of course, the league is really balanced that way with the hard salary cap. Every team is just a career year away from an unexpected guy of being in the mix.
Exactly right. Now, speaking of the goaltending, New Jersey's next on the list. Unfortunately, we wish nothing but the best for Corey Crawford, whatever that situation is, but that leaves them with Mackenzie Blackwood and a lot of question marks behind. But we have year 2 of somebody that could, one of those young guys that could be a lot stronger, and we expect to be better in Jack Hughes. So I expect him to be exciting at different points to see how they develop, but it seems like that's a big mountain to climb for them this year.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too big of a mountain. Get back in the lottery one more year, get a year older. It's a place where they could sign a guy, a free agent, if they have the cap room. It's right near New York City. You can live in New York City and play in Newark. So that's always good for spouses and for young guys, and college free agents love big cities. So they get a bit of an advantage signing college free agents, because young people want to live in the city, at least pre-pandemic. We'll see what happens then if that changes.
Right.
But I think Jack Hughes is an absolute ultra talent. I thought he'd be better even in his rookie year, despite being smaller and physically a bit overmatched. I think he should have went to college for a year, and played college hockey like his brother. And I think it would have been a world of good to him to dominate in college and then go to the NHL. But it's hard to pass up $1 million, long term, and it starts in the front end as well.
Yeah,
but I think it really would have been good for him to do that. But I'm a big believer in him. I think he's a massive talent, and he's going to definitely be better than last year. So the team will be better than last year. But yeah, their issue for a long time, since they gave Corey Schneider a lot of money, has been goaltending, and they just haven't had it. So they need to figure that out like everybody else, and we'll find out early.
See where it goes. The Islanders, speaking of which, have a pretty good situation. Semyon Varlamov, I believe, is going to be the starter, but everyone's looking at the incoming rookie Ilya Sorokin. Barry Trotz is still there. They made a great run last year before they bowed out to Tampa Bay. How serious of a cup contender do we need to consider them, John?
I don't think they're a cup contender. I just don't think they have enough dynamic scoring. Barzal's their best player, but I don't think he's a dynamic playoff scorer. I don't think he's a put a guy in your back. Again, you got to win 4 playoff series. I don't think he's quite in that echelon of someone like a Kucherov, who we saw help Tampa bring them a cup. Don't think he's quite there. And they got a Hall of Fame coach in Barry Trotz. He's one of the best coaches in the NHL. He'll go to the Hall of Fame one day, and they should make the playoffs. They got goalie depth, as you mentioned. A great structure, really seems like Anders Lee is one of the best leaders in the NHL. So they have excellent leadership. So again, I think they'll make the playoffs. They'll certainly be right there, but I just don't know if they have enough dynamic action to certainly, first of all, to make the playoffs in that division, and then to try to win a couple playoff series as well. It'll be tough. I just think it's going to be one of those teams that they make it and they always battle. We all have those teams. Some of those teams were our favorite teams when we were kids. It's like they're right there, but you just can't imagine them breaking through against elite teams.
How about the Rangers? Are they ready to break through the playoffs yet, given, Panarin, Zibanejad? Now, obviously, Alexis Lafreniere is going to be in the mix. So I know they're in a rebuild, but Has that been accelerated, and can they even break through this year if everything falls right?
I think so. I think Panarin's one of the most underrated players in the league. I know everyone knows he's a great player. I think he's a really great player. Wherever he goes, he wins. There's nothing he can't do. He can shoot from distance. He sets people up. He set Patrick Kane up for his best year. I'm a big believer in the Rangers and what they're doing and what they've added, and their youth and their organization from head to toe is stout. And I do think that they're going to make the playoffs this year.
Carter Hart leads the Philadelphia Flyers. They were about as hot as any team last year before the pandemic put everything to a halt. Can they get back to that level, John?
That's a great question. I don't think so. They're close. He's an absolute stud, no doubt about it. Couturier, they have such nice depth up the middle. But at times, again, when you see them in the playoff series against a really elite team, do they have enough scoring and dynamic play? Now, again, you can get a team and an injury or two, or a team gets upset, and you can kind of carve your way to a Final Four. And that's certainly, they could certainly do that. But and again, the unexpected player could bounce forward, but I still think they're a very good team, and they're probably a playoff team. But yeah, I'm not sure if they'll get back to that position, but it's going to be fun to keep an eye on them.
Do you feel like the Pittsburgh Penguins only have maybe two more shots at the cup before we officially close the Crosby Malkin window?
Probably, unless an unexpected Crosby and Malkin reappear through the draft. Sometimes you get lucky, like the Bruins got David Pastrnak, like in the 20th overall area, and that can happen. And that changes a franchise for, again, the Bruins not be the Bruins without Pastrnak. He's their best player, and they got him late. And sometimes that happens. The Ducks got Getzlaf and Perry late in the first round.
Right.
Now, certainly you want to get top three guys. Almost every Stanley Cup winner has a guy who was taken first to third overall. And the Penguins obviously have a couple of those guys, and,
Exactly.
and they went on to win multiple cups. And you need those guys. But occasionally you get lucky. And like Anaheim did, and they went on to win a cup. Of course, they got Niedermayer, a very high draft pick guy, to help win that cup. But yeah, so that's what it really comes down to is will someone appear out of nowhere? They probably, I thought, they have a chance. It's a decent free agent destination if they have cap room to play with a Crosby and a Malkin. And Crosby certainly probably still will have that appeal for a couple of years. I always thought that Malkin would be the guy they would trade before he hit that over the hill status, to kind of maybe get a couple pieces to extend the run for Crosby, and using Crosby as the foundation of that extended run. Not that Malkin certainly isn't committed and a great player, but maybe they get a little younger, get a couple multiple pieces to extend Crosby's window to maybe 30, 36, 37, where he'll probably still be really good. But at that point, you don't want him to be the best player at that age. They're reaching the point where they can't be the best player and win a cup. So they need to somehow get lucky with that 20th overall pick or 15th overall pick, or make a trade, and that guy becomes their best player, like Pastrnak is the Bruins' best player as a guy in his early 20s, because that's what you need. It's a young man's game. Yep. These guys have their best years and careers often in their early 20s. Bobby Orr went flying through the air when he was 21. Wayne Gretzky scored 92 goals when he was 21. Like, that's a player's prime is 20 to 25. That's when they're physically the best they will be. And you need those guys, a few of those guys, as the best player.
And speaking of another veteran team, the Washington Capitals, that wrap up the division, brand new head coach, a lot of the same characters we used to know. Ilya Samsonov now is going to take over the Nets. Do you feel like Laviolette has the key to maybe unlock another cup run there?
I do. Yeah. I think he's the perfect hire. He's the right guy. Maybe a short timer there. They can look at him as a 3-year guy. Maybe he's been around. He kind of gets that now. But yeah, with Ovechkin and trying to get Kuznetsov to go every night, and Backstrom, they're in a pretty good position where they have some young guys, again, like Kuznetsov, who has a chance to be their best overall player. Ovechkin, certainly their most impactful goal scorer. Carlson is a phenomenal defenseman. I think he has Hall of Fame potential. So they're a real solid team. And I think Laviolette could get a little more out of them, give him some stability, some swagger back. He's definitely a swagger guy, and he's going to up that right away. And I think you'll see a big difference in them. And though he has the respect, I think he'll have their ear for a little bit. And Washington is definitely a threat to win the cup.
We're halfway through at 8:30 on the East. If you're just tuning in, this is the Hockey Writers Live. I'm your host, Mark Scheig, and we have John Buccigross joining us. Halfway through our season previews, got 2 more divisions to go. So off to the Central we go, into the Carolina Hurricanes. And I was talking to Mike Maniscalco a few weeks ago, their play-by-play announcer, and we both agree that they're kind of on the verge, but we kind of wonder about their goaltending. Is that a situation where if they get the goaltending, can they challenge a Tampa Bay or maybe even take the division?
Yeah, boy. I mean, they're close. Like you said, a lot of teams are close, but you got to bring it every year, and that's not easy to do. And like you said, you need goaltending, and I think that's a team that would kind of like to have crowds at home. It's a tough place to play, a unique place to play with a loud crowd, and I think they ride that. So, but they have they definitely have a lot of young talent. I just don't think they're at that Tampa Bay level. Now, with Kucherov certainly out, that levels the playing field for sure. But they're right there, but I don't think they're quite there unless other teams get, a few more injuries and becomes a little more level. But they're, like you said, they're just under Toronto or just under Boston or just under. So that's good. If you're close enough, sometimes it's close enough. So certainly they're a team on the rise.
Certainly on the way up for sure. A team that doesn't feel like that they're on the way up is Chicago. Unfortunately, the Jonathan Toews situation feels like a rebuild. I'm not quite sure how to exactly to put it, but is there any hope for this kind of season, or how do you feel that the Blackhawks should try to approach the season to get the most out of it?
Yeah, you got to think they almost should tank for a top 3 pick. With Doc being injured, he was going to have a big year. He's such a horse, a wagon of a player. So I think they really should focus on October of next in 10 months away. Now, and I think part of that discussion is, do they trade Patrick Kane? Do they consider doing that? With the giant cap number, with the haul you could get back, especially for a team like Buffalo. Yep. If it's reached the point now where I know in the back of his mind, he's always wanted to go to Buffalo and play. It's definitely in his mind. So, he's married. He's got a kid. He's an amazing player. I just really wonder, and as Buffalo starts to accumulate some stuff, and we saw some of the young players at the World Junior, and there might be something there to bring Kane home and help Buffalo get to the next level, while replenishing Chicago, because they're not going to be able to trade Toews with his cap number and his production, but Kane, they certainly could. And I think that has to be, maybe no one has had the courage to verbalize it in a meeting because they're afraid it would get out. But whether it's the GM or the assistant GM or the scout, it has to be a consideration.
Yeah. We've mentioned it here several times too. I would love to see that. Just is that Buffalo needs something. Kane, I think, would fit there like a glove, and Chicago needs a lot of help. I think there's a perfect match there, like you said. Now, to get to the team that I cover, and I'm kind of curious about Columbus, you tweeted recently that you're very bullish on them. So it's kind of a 2-parter. Why are you bullish on the Blue Jackets despite the questions on offense? And then what's with the perception about maybe star players not wanting to be there, and especially this Pierre-Luc Dubois situation? What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, he's not a star player. He's a good player, and they need him to be a really good player. And it stinks when something like that gets out. They have such great character in that room with Cam Atkinson, who's totally bought in about living in Columbus and investing in Columbus and living in Ohio. That's just the perfect guy. It kind of reminds me of the Hartford Whalers when they had a great run there for a while with Ron Francis and Mike Layute, Ray Ferraro, and they really embraced Hartford. It was a fun city. They liked playing there. They were young kids just enjoying the city. And I don't know why Dubois just won't do that and just enjoy your youth, get better, play for your guys. You're a young guy. You can play for 15 years. You can become an unrestricted free agent soon enough. Why do this now? I just don't get it. And Foligno and all those, Seth Jones, one of the best defensemen in hockey. And he's a guy who really seems committed and all in, living in the present. not worrying about the future. The future will be fine. So it just kind of, again, I have no real personal ties to anything with Columbus, but just offended me the way that he would act that way. And I think it's just disrespectful to those players who give so much to that organization. So, but I still think that they have some good depth, tons of character, a superstar in Jones, good goaltending, good coaching. And so I think they'll find a way to make the playoffs.
The Dallas Stars made the Stanley Cup final last year, but we had the COVID outbreak. Tyler Seguin is out. Are they a team that can possibly do it again? They had a couple of unsung heroes last year on the way to that cup run. Just how repeatable is that?
Yeah, a lot of people are kind of down on them, but man, there's so much talent there. Obviously, Sagan, and then obviously and they're not going to play for a while here. They're not going to start the season for a bit, so we'll see what that does in terms of compressing their schedule. Will guys get injured? So yeah, you can't be. You almost have to. If it was the old force you to bet a paycheck, will they make the playoffs or not? You'd probably have to go no, just because the odds of everything happening, despite all the talent and the compressed schedule and the goaltender who probably won't repeat that performance over a long stretch. So, maybe not. Maybe we're underselling somebody. Sometimes when a team has a lot of Finns and players don't know who they are, and they tend to overrate Canadians and Americans, I think sometimes, and underrate some of these Europeans who are like really good players, like they're really good. And so maybe they'll be one of those teams that flies under the radar and is just sneaky good every year for a long time.
And now Detroit, obviously a real bad year last year. Moving forward from that, they seem like that they're a little bit better this year. A lot's going to depend on the development of their youth, especially. Just give the Red Wings fans some hope. And is Steve Yzerman on the right path at this point in your mind?
I think he's definitely on the right path. I think, he's still trying to figure out this year's, again, they don't want to make the playoffs. They would love to get another top 3 to 5 pick. They'd love to win the lottery, maybe, if they could. And get and they're probably going to have a new coach at some point next October. Whether they ride Blashill out the rest of this year or this is their chance. Yes, maybe you already have someone in mind and they'll bring him in this season, or he's looking ahead, or maybe Yzerman hasn't looked that far ahead. He's just worried about accumulating talent first, because Blashill's a good guy and a good coach. But at some point, obviously, like any organization, you want to start fresh. You're just going to do it. And kind of like, with the Jets, do you keep Sam Darnold? Do you trade Sam Darnold? You probably draft a quarterback and start fresh because there's scar tissue. But sometimes guys just develop late. Terry Bradshaw was a good early for the Steelers, worked out fine. They were patient. And so that's kind of what reminds me of that situation. So you just kind of another year, he's still figuring out the organization, evaluating talent, and trying to get in a situation cap-wise we can really make a splash.
John, the Florida Panthers are up next. New general manager, Joel Quenneville is back. Sergei Bobrovsky had a down year for his standards, but is one of the most hardworking players out there. I wonder if he's got the bounce back capability in him, but is that the formula for them to possibly sneak into the playoff picture, is a bounce back from him? And, Barkov's a really good player and he got some really interesting pieces all around.
Yeah, I think he's always been really overrated, Bobrovsky. I think the contract was a big mistake and a big number. I've been bullish on the Panthers for 2-3 years. I kind of felt, like you said, fall in love with Barkov and this young group, and I picked them to make the playoffs every year, and they just keep letting me down. But Quenneville's such a good coach. They have this pretty good core of young players and defensemen. But then the Bobrovsky thing to me, just they got to figure out in net. And I'm just not sure about them now. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe this will be the year they get in, but I just don't feel comfortable with them like other teams. And I don't know what they are. I don't know what they do well. Like, I don't know what their identity is. I just can't figure them out. And like I said, and I'm not real big on him. So the Panthers to me is going to be interesting to watch. I'm going to try to figure them out early.
And the team I've been trying to figure out is the Nashville Predators, because they got the defense. UC Saros seems like that he's ascending up. Pekka Rinne's kind of reaching toward the end here, but they got Philippe Forsberg's a great player. I thought the center depth it looked good on paper. What do we make of the Predators, John?
Yeah, they're a weird team now. It's like, they really try to get Duchesne hard, but he's kind of that second tier guy. He's not really a superstar. Got a cool name, again, one of those cool Canadian names and cool kid. They think, and they sometimes get overvalued. Or a team has a quiet Finn or a Swede, and they're a better player. And
Right.
so, they're in a weird spot. David Poyle's tried everything. He's signed guys, he's traded for guys, been very aggressive, and almost since it feels like the window's closing for some reason. And Forsberg's unbelievable player. And they're strong on defense still. Like you said, they're probably a playoff team, but are they a dynamic team come playoff time to compete with Colorado and Vegas, even St. Louis? They seem like they're a pretty good gear below.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the class of the NHL, at least in that division, of course, the last team, the Tampa Bay Lightning, I guess the way that I'll frame this question is, without Kucherov, are they still the class of the NHL, or would you consider possibly the Colorados, the Vegases, maybe now ahead? Because what is the overall impact of them losing Kucherov?
Yeah, they can't be the class of the NHL because he's their best player. So when you lose your best player, it's gigantic. They still have a lot of good players, but they don't have their best player. And obviously Stamkos will be driven and to prove that they're not going to fall off. And he could have a massive year, but he's not Kucherov. Point is really good. But not having Kucherov in the power play, teams will be able to defend them much easier and better. Hedman's obviously an absolute Hall of Fame stud. Vasilevsky's going to make the Hall of Fame. He's a stud. But, now you get another injury to a key guy, and they had to trade some guys, some depth guys, really important depth guys to get out of the cap. We'll see. But they've always drafted and developed well, so they could bring a guy up that we never heard of who could be really good. And Cirelli's a really good player, but I don't think they're quite the class. They still should make the postseason, but they're not what they are without their best player.
Yeah, and then conveniently they might get him back in time for the playoffs. And
absolutely,
curious to see if he can shake off the rest right away. So again, we're about 8:45 on the East. Hockey Writers Live here. Season preview. Got John Buccigross with us, and we have one more division to go through real quick. We'll start with the Anaheim Ducks, John. And this division, to me anyway, outside of the top three that we just previously mentioned, the Avs, Vegas, and St. Louis, I feel like number 4 is kind of up for grabs. And even a team like Anaheim, if everything falls right, I look at John Gibson, but do they have a path to the playoffs this year, or what should they focus on?
Yeah, they're fun. They have a lot of good young players, and we saw Trevor Zegras at the World Junior. Yep. It'll be fun to see if he can step in and bring some swagger. I think he will. I think he can play in the league right now. Obviously, he was way better than everybody else. When you see that, a guy can play in the NHL right now. And they have some. And Gibson's a really good goalie, and they have some stuff out there. They really do. Like you said, I'm looking forward to that division. To get home late from work and you get the center ice package and you watch those late games. I like doing that. And that division, like you said, it's wide open after the top 3, and that's going to be fun to see them battle it out. And Anaheim is coming. They are drafting and developing well, and they're in a pretty cool spot. They kind of remind me of Vancouver a little bit, and we'll see if they can get that high end talent. And they got a better goalie in Gibson. So watch out for Anaheim.
I can't wait for the I-5, especially in the coming years too, when Byfield and Drysdale and Zegras and all those young players just are ready to take the next step. That's going to be an intense rivalry, and I can't wait to see how that's going to work.
Good stuff for sure. Yeah, we saw some of those guys at the World Junior, and it was fun to see the future.
Yeah. Now, speaking of kind of on the other side of the spectrum, the Arizona Coyotes, the offseason turmoil, lost draft picks, John Chaika is gone, Bill Armstrong is in, but they do have a pretty good goalie in Darcy Kemper. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is still there for now. What do you make of them?
Yeah, it seem to be stuck in the mud right now. It's not a great energy for a player to feel. They want to feel like everything's all go. It's we talked about that earlier, about the momentum of the season, the momentum of a young team, the momentum of the sport is built for that. Where the job becomes a cause, the job becomes a brotherhood. It's organic. It's hard to define. It's hard to pinpoint, hard to create. You certainly can have foundations that can enable it to happen easier. But with that in mind, it doesn't seem to be those pillars in Arizona that could foster. It could still happen. Team can get off to a good start, and then they kind of create, like I said, out of thin air, organically, a cause and a momentum. But it does seem like there's too much going on there. And if they lose a couple, then you have a built-in excuse. But yeah, Kemper's been really undervalued as a goaltender in the last few years. He's really good. He could be a piece looking forward to some of these teams we talked about without a goalie, maybe to get a pretty good haul to try to figure out for the next regime what their plan is.
Do you feel like Phil Kessel finishes the year as a Coyote?
Good question. They'll have to see how much game he has, what shape he's in. But it probably makes sense that at some point he goes to a team looking for a top 6 jolt. And it probably does make sense that he's a guy that's going to move a little bit towards the end of his career.
Mm-hmm. Now, the next team, probably one of the class of the NHL, the Colorado Avalanche, made a great. Devon Toews, I think, is a great pickup for them. Injuries kind of caught up to them a little bit at the end of last year. I still kind of wonder about the goaltending, if Grubauer or Francouz is the answer. But outside of that, I mean, it seems like they check all the other boxes.
Yeah, they're a powerhouse. But like you said, I think the goaltender is a pretty big question. And that's what we just mentioned, Kemper. That's a guy that, geez, do they give up one of those young assets to get something like that? I think they need to evaluate that goaltender position early and then make an aggressive move, because they're ready to go. Again, we mentioned it's a young man's game. Everyone's in their prime. Prime is not 28 to 32 in hockey. It's younger, and they're there. They're ready to go. But you hate to have a team and your goalie's short of winning the cup. Remember those days back with St. Louis with Tkachuk and Dimitra and McGinnis and Pronger? They just didn't have the goalie, and you got to have it. So maybe they truly believe. I don't think the kid is a great goalie. We'll see. Grubauer has looked really good in time, and he's always been well thought of. But again, to win 4 playoff series, that's what you have to define your goaltending by. Is he a 4 playoff series horse? So
exactly.
We'll see.
We'll see indeed. The LA Kings are next. And we talked about them a little bit when we talked about Anaheim, but I want to focus on the veterans. There's still Anze Kopitar still there. Dustin Brown is still there. Jeff Carter is still there. Drew Doughty is still there. Combine them with all of the youth, and you've got a very interesting mix. Can that veteran core find a way, maybe working with that youth to maybe sneak into a 4th spot?
I don't think so. I just think, they're at the end, Carter and Brown. Kopitar, certainly it's working out well where he can really be a valuable guy going forward, where these young guys can come in, and he doesn't have to be the best player on the team, but he's still really good. Doughty's an interesting guy. He's certainly a guy that you can kind of see possibly, if you're getting close and he's aging, do we look to move him to get a lot more pieces? It's always, it's always tempting, I'm sure, but he's such a great player, ultra competitive. I love guys who go crazy and break their sticks on the bench and do nutso stuff, because they're all in, man. They love it. Yep. And he's had a great career, probably a Hall of Fame career already. So, but if those guys can channel it, and they had a long off season and not as long as a regular season, maybe they're a team with that leadership of Kopitar that's going to win 2 out of 3 games, and just going to kind of peck along there and be 6-3-1 after 10, and then they're just working their way up, then they're 12-4-6, and they're kind of alive. So it'll be fun to watch, and that's why that's part of this season is kind of fascinating. The 56 games, the new playoff format, it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, the goaltending would be curious to see how much does Jonathan Quick have left, and Cal Peterson's supposed to be the heir apparent. Can he take over the reins, and how that's all going to work out? It'd be really interesting. Just a couple more here. So the Minnesota Wild are next. They have a new GM. They have a new captain. I kind of feel like that they're trying to bring a different culture, and especially with the hire of Bill Guerin. Is that what you see, and what kind of expectations should Wild fans have?
Yeah, I've always thought they were kind of a blasé team, whether it was the uniform, whether it was the name. Just from the get-go, they've always seemed to lack just a real jolt and brand. They just quite haven't. I can't figure them out. I mean, Vegas is the extreme, but it's such a cool name and a cool city with a cool pregame routine they have. They gave their city like an instant brand.
Mhm.
And Columbus is now finally getting there. So they've kind of created their brand of a team, and Tortorella's helped that, giving them personality in the cannon. And it's Columbus to me kind of has a vibe about them now. And Minnesota just doesn't seem to have, for some reason, create that vibe. And Bill
Mhm.
Guerin's a guy with a big personality, one of the best guys I've met. I've been covering the hockey for 30 years. And if I had just a guy that you want to talk to and lights up a room and it makes you feel good to talk to him, it's Bill Guerin. So I think he's going to energize the whole organization and give it some bounce and figure that out. And maybe, he can be this. I think he needs to get out there front and center. I think he needs to be controversial. I think he needs to be like a Brian Burke, Bobby Clark personality, because that organization and team needs it. And I think he should get out there and just say some crazy stuff.
Get them on the map, whatever they got to do.
Right.
St. Louis is next, and they just got off winning a cup a couple of years ago. They had the recent retirement.
Yep.
They got Tarasenko is going to be on long-term injured reserve. So a couple of dynamic players there, but they still got like the Ryan O'Reillys of the world. Torrey Krug's now on board. I think it comes down to a Jordan Binnington rebound. What do you see of the Blues in, can they overtake Colorado or Vegas somehow?
Yeah, it's like you mentioned, just won the cup a couple of years ago, but Petrangelo's gone.
Yep.
Bouwmeester's retired.
Yep.
Tarasenko's out. It's just, and certainly Hoffman and Krug were good additions, and they will help. But I think it just kind of keeps them where they were. I don't know if it makes them actually better or returns them to that slot. It'd have to get a huge year out of Ryan O'Reilly and Shen, and I just don't know if that. These guys have played a lot of hockey. They've been through a lot of battles. So still a very strong team, playoff team. But you're right, with Binnington, maybe that was one of those heaters he was just on at a young age, and he might never get that level again. This team with a couple more injuries, they could be scuffling a bit. But they got some pretty good bottom six depth and some pretty good leadership from GM to coach. But that's going to be a fun team to see how we don't know until we watch these. If had no preseason, don't know what Torrey Krug looks like in a uniform with the Blues, how he's going to fit in. He might look slow, he might look great, he might be the difference. So it's going to be fun to watch. But I think they need one of these young guys to provide a jolt.
And we're just down to two teams left, and the San Jose Sharks are out here, and boy, the Evander Kane situation, just the last thing that they need right in front of the start of the season. But there's some veterans there: Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, Joe Thornton is unfortunately gone. Can they somehow make a comeback? But with the Kane situation, not quite sure.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Such heavy on the back end, salary and talent. Obviously Hurdle is a big horse. I love his game. He could have a monster year at any time. Overall, though, it just seems like they're a team that's kind of on the down. Wouldn't be surprised if they made a big deal with Burns or Karlsson. Probably more so Karlsson. Burns is such an amazing personality and guy to have on your team. You don't want to upset season ticket holders, especially when you haven't had fans and you want to get a big a base as you can when you do get fans, whenever that is. It's important to have guys teams like, and you want to be ready for that. So that's an interesting dynamic to all of this. So I imagine Doug Wilson will play it safe and see what his team is like. But overall, there's a lot of questions there.
And last but not least, the Vegas Golden Knights. Seems like a lot of popular pick to win the cup. But what is the biggest hurdle in your mind for them to get to that point?
Geez, I'm not sure. Like you said, goaltending depth, really good coach, add a new guy with a cup that really gets everyone's attention, and Pietrangelo. They have stalwarts there, popular guys who have been there from the beginning. I think Vegas, they'll always be Vegas's team more than the Raiders will ever be Vegas's team, because they were born and hatched there. Their entire history is there. It's really cool to go to a game there. I highly recommend any fan, if your team is in Vegas, look at the schedule when we have teams when fans back in the arenas and playing your weekend around watching your team play. It's really cool. So yeah, I think they are right there. A Western, just to have a playoff series with those two is just going to be epic. I hope it happens. And I just don't see a lot of weaknesses. At times up the middle during the playoffs, they have been overmatched. I guess that would be the question. Can they hang with Kadri and McKinnon in a best of 7 series? That'll be fun to watch.
Most definitely. So, couple predictions. Do you have an idea who your Cup finalists are and who will win it, and then maybe who will win like the Hart, the Norris, and the Calder?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly riding that Colorado Vegas train. I'd probably go Vegas to win that one. I do think that adding Pietrangelo, and they really also could make another move probably if they had to. They could probably, and of course, getting Mark Stone a while back. Also, he's starting to really fit in there and be a real leader for that team. What a great player he is. So I do think Vegas is going to find a way to get back to the finals. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if they face Washington again. I think it'd be kind of cool to see that happen again. Ovechkin is still driven to play and driven to score. Laviolette is a new coach. They're going to be tough to play in the playoffs. Getting a little long in the tooth with some of their guys, Backstrom, Oshie, and those kinds of players. But I don't think Toronto is quite ready yet. Boston's taken a hit back. Tampa Bay, if they get Kucherov back, like you said, they're definitely a team that can recruit. Let's go Tampa Bay, Vegas for my Cup.
Tampa Bay, Vegas. That sounds good. So a couple plugs for you. I saw the Bucci Overtime Challenge, of course, is going to come back starting tomorrow night. So is it going to be the same as before? Any kind of changes at all?
Not really. We do a few regular. It's primarily built for the playoffs, but we'll do some regular season games. And kind of the thing, what we do is if you pick a guy to score in the overtime and it goes to a shootout, if the first shootout goal scorer, if you have him and the guy happens to score the first shootout goal, then that's another winner. So that's the same thing. We're just kind of hoping in the future, maybe all 50 states will have legalized gambling and we can play Bucci Overtime Challenge for like 99 cents. And we'll have some nice big cash prizes. So long term, that's the goal. But yeah, It's fun. I love interacting with the fans and talking with the fans. And that's the best part of it.
And where can they find you? We're going to see you doing some play-by-play. Maybe the NHL is going to be a bigger presence on ESPN in the future. Is there anything that you can say about that at all?
We hope. This is the last year of the American package with NBC. I'm sure, I imagine negotiations or at least bids, networks put their bids in during the last year, which normally probably would have been announced by now, but the bids probably already would have been in. But I think because of what happened last year, they waited until this month. So I imagine either now or very soon, networks will be presenting their bids on what they will pay and what they want for the NHL package. Sometimes two networks go in together. They'll kind of tether themselves together and say, here's our combined package. They want this many games. We want this many games. Here's our total check that we'll give you. I think Gary Bettman's expecting a big raise. And so I certainly hope ESPN is part of that. And then that would start with next season, next October or November. And I would love to do games. I would love to get involved with hockey. And I've done the last 7 national championships in college hockey. I did the World Cup. It was really fun. So I do really want to do more play-by-play. Would love it to be hockey and would love it to be at ESPN. So we should find out in a month or two who gets those rights starting next season. And I hope ESPN is part of it.
And you've been a part of our lives for a long time, going back to the 90s and NHL Tonight. So we hope nothing but the best for you. Great job tonight. Best of luck this season. We'll definitely talk to you down the road. John Buccigross, thank you for joining us tonight.
Peace. Thank you all.
Peace.
Lovers of hockey.
Lovers of hockey. Have a good night, everybody. The season starts tomorrow. Enjoy it. We'll see you next week.